Welcome to Perfectly Imperfect Me 365, the podcast where we get real about mental health, messy growth, and being human one day at a time. I'm your host, Rachel, and together we're navigating life's chaos with honesty, compassion, and a little humor. Let's get into it. Dr. Kiki Fehling is a clinical psychologist, author, and Linehan Board certified expert in dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. She is known for taking complex psychological topics and turning them into practical takeaways that people can actually use. An expert in borderline personality disorder, trauma, suicide prevention, and LGBTQ+ mental health, Kiki speaks nationally to both medical and community audiences. She also shares evidence-based mental health information with her over 75,000 followers on social media at DBT Kiki. And she's the author of Self-Directed DBT Skills, the DBT Cards for Coping Skills, and the LGBTQ+ mental health workbook that is coming out June of 2026. And thank you so much. I am so excited. Oh, which by the way, I've got to actually make sure that your DBT cards, which do sit literally on there, because before I even actually saw you on TikTok, I own those.
Oh, really?
Yes, because I love everything DBT. And, it's interesting because I got into DBT kind of late in my private practice. I mean, I got intensively trained in 2009 by Charlie Swenson and Shireen Rizzi. And I literally and I'm obsessed with the two of them, and am so envious because you got to basically be coached, trained by her, learn everything it seems like that by one of the greatest.
Yeah, no, Shireen is incredible. And yeah, I feel incredibly lucky. Because I don't have it in my bio, I went to grad school, so folks know, at Rutgers University, where Shireen Rizvi used to be. And I wasn't her student in her lab, but I was in her DBT program for, I guess, 3 years. And it was, yeah, I feel just so incredibly grateful, not only to have her as a mentor and friend now, but as graduate student training. I just got so much amazing suicide assessment, complex diagnostic help, really, really great behavioral training. So yeah, she's awesome. And I'm glad you had her, because even for the intensives, she and Charlie are amazing.
Amazing. And we're talking this was 2009.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I envy, and it's interesting, probably the one part of my life that and I don't want to use the word regret, but I kind of wish I had a do-over, which we all know that that's not possible, right? I've radically accepted my life the way it is, and it's beautiful, and I'm grateful, and I'm blessed. And the one thing I wish I would have had the kind of guts to do is kind of pick up and go someplace where I could get that intensive training, right? But again, I said earlier, I got DBT intensively trained. I was already in my private practice since 1998, before I was actually even licensed. I was married when I got intensively trained from, BTech. So my life was a little different, and I already had kids at that time.
Yeah.
So to pick up and to move or to kind of uproot my family wasn't possible.
No, yeah.
So my training, I take some of the trainings with some of the best people that I love, that I learn a lot from, but it's very different with that being immersed, with that in your face kind of program.
Yeah, 100%. In grad school is where we get the intensive supervision. So I was working with Shireen and getting feedback from her, and then one of her other colleagues in New Jersey, Carrie Diamond, who's also an incredible DBT clinician, who I was seeing each of them for an hour a week, one-on-one, and then in team, and then all of the things. And so then I also had all my grad student colleagues who were learning from her, and we were consulting with each other. Yeah, it was really, I was very fortunate to have that DBT team so early.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about because I saw, which you didn't include in your bio, which also has been one of my staples, just so you know, part of my mindfulness exercises at the end of the year is the DBT holiday song that I saw somewhere. I think it was on LinkedIn that you were one of the like singers, writers with that.
Oh, I don't know. The holiday song?
Didn't you sing like that, like the DBT skills, like the 12 days of like, did you not? Or did I,
Oh, so I sang at the Is It DBT sing along,
right?
but I don't know the 12 days of DBT.
Oh, so I misunderstood
Yeah,
because,
but you love that. Well, I'm not,
oh
I
my,
love it too. So yeah.
yeah, I love it. So I thought you were, because I saw that on LinkedIn that, oh, and because I think Charlie posted that you're something about like you're a great singer. And
Yeah.
like, and so I guess I just assumed,
Yeah.
which is completely wrong, that you were a part of that. But anyway, yes, I love it.
Cool. Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
I love all things. So one thing I did do is I did write an article for the DBT Bulletin about how I love pop music and the interplay between pop music and DBT. So like I would understand your confusion. I am really into like that intersection of things. So
Right. I love that. So tell me, how did you, because you said at 29 you had a heart attack, which is so young,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And did that transform like the work you were doing from what you did before that to
Yeah.
like after that? Or were you always like doing this kind of work and you just had to like literally use those skills after you had the heart attack?
More so the latter. So
Okay.
in when I was 29, I was in my final year of graduate school in clinical internship. And so I'd already been training in DBT at Rutgers, like I just described. And when that happened, I mean, I've struggled with my mental health previously in my life, like before that with depression, and have had life experiences that were very difficult. But that's probably definitely still like the biggest like acute trauma of my life, and
Okay.
it was insanely difficult to deal with. And so I was just so grateful to have the DBT skills. And while I had always been using DBT skills in my real life, I can't imagine having gone through that without them, essentially.
Right.
The way that I responded afterwards, it wasn't so much as a shift in my clinical practice. I did just go on to become a DBT clinician, but then it did influence my trajectory in general, not only in my personal life, but in my professional life, because it led to me quitting being a therapist a couple
I
of years
saw
ago
that.
and doing more what I'm doing now, as in terms of the writing and speaking and disseminating stuff. And so it's not like, and now I really want to get into the heart health field. I am already like volunteering in that area, but it's such a missing need. There's so many survivors that don't get the mental health support that they need. And I think DBT could be a really good fit because it's so concrete and the skills and it's easy to
Yeah.
get out there. So those are my dreams for the future. That's where I'm hoping to head.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because I think that, I tell people that people say, why did you get into DBT? And I say, well, it's a very interesting story because I didn't even have my license. I was being supervised by a psychiatrist in the practice in 1998. I had just got graduated grad school. He was my clinical supervisor at it was called Fair Oaks Hospital at the time. Now it's Fair Oaks Pavilion. It was a psych hospital. And one of the first clients he ever gave me was a client who suffered with intense self-harm. And I probably should preface this also for anybody, and I should have said this at the beginning, is that this is not in lieu of therapy. This is not therapy to
Mm-hmm.
protect both of our licenses. This is, we're not telling anybody what they should be doing or that DBT is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I completely forgot to say that. So I apologize. But yeah, this is, you know, we both have licenses and they need to be protected. And this is so if anybody is struggling with suicidal thinking, self-harm, please reach out if you don't have a coach or a therapist or even a friend or somebody that can provide a safe space. And please, maybe this may not be the topic that you want to listen to today, or maybe listen to it with somebody else that you can feel safe with. So completely. I think I was just so excited to get on here and finally like meet you. And but so I wasn't even licensed. He was supervising me. I was getting my clinical supervision hours back then, and he referred me a client that was, I mean, all DBT needed with her. She was in and out of the hospitals every weekend, self-harm every day. There wasn't a day. And I did not even have any DBT training.
Mhm.
I think I took my first DBT training with Marshall Linehan in Orlando. It was a 3-day training, and like I think it was like in 98. So it was kind of just coming out at that point, you
Yeah.
know. And I just remember loving it then. And we somehow, I think my personality is I'm a sharp shooter in a lot of ways and a straight shooter, which is a very much aligned with DBT in a lot of ways. But I also have that ability to validate and have compassion.
Yeah.
So naturally, it kind of just fit for me.
Yeah.
For me also, I laugh because I'm a very type A, black and white thinker. And then I had my kids and they completely like shook my world, right?
Mhm.
So DBT was a great fit for me because it was concrete skills.
Mhm.
It was really concrete skills. And, that's where, so when I started, I think that a lot of people don't realize that we need it. Like, and I think that's why I've been able to cope so well with a lot of things in my life because inadvertently I got these skills
Mhm.
becoming a DBT therapist. And it wasn't until 11, like what, 10 years later, 11 years later, that I actually went for the training.
Right. Yeah. And I think that does speak to how even like DBT, now this is a personal opinion, but DBT has so much wisdom that even just learning a little bit of it can be so helpful.
100%.
Right. And like now going into the research, we now do have data to show us that like just learning DBT skills can be helpful for a lot of different mental health difficulties.
Absolutely.
But to your point, like in the 90s, still like when it was still pretty early, Marsha had been doing that, Marsha Linehan, the creator of DBT, had been doing that work for a while. But in terms of the knowledge about it, like it was the point at which folks like your old client, folks like plenty of my clients, like struggling with self-harm, hospitalizations, intense emotions, impulsive behaviors, right? Like BPD,
All that.
borderline personality disorder, had very, very few options. And most of the medical and mental health providers they would have come to would feel overwhelmed by them, wouldn't know how to
Right.
help them, wouldn't have the tools to help them. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, DBT is life-saving for like literally life-saving for a lot of people. And it certainly has been life-changing for me at least.
100%. And I say that like, it's interesting. My oldest son had said to me last week, we were on vacation, and he said, I just have to say, Mom, I'm very thankful that you are a therapist as my
Mhm.
mom, because you didn't sit us down and say, you need these skills, but like I got them. And
Yeah.
that was the first time he's ever like acknowledged that, like me being a therapist.
Mm.
Because, as a therapist, I don't want to be that therapist. I want to be their mom, right? And as a therapist, it's ingrained in me. And
Mm.
that doesn't mean
Totally.
that, and that for all my clients does not mean that I'm perfect by any means. There are many days that I'm not using my skills. There are many times that my feet are so stuck in the ground and I'm being so willful. And I know that if I just shift a little bit this way,
Yeah.
I could enjoy my afternoon,
Yeah. No,
right?
totally. Yeah.
So, and it's interesting because I believe that although DBT has been initially started for, self-harm, suicidal thinking, and now it's gone to so many different other like types of treatment. And I always say, like, if we could just teach DBT in the schools from a very young age, imagine the world that we would have.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
I'm like so passionate about that because I think, but not passionate enough to go like march on New York because or in DC because I'm not like political like that. I don't know the policies like that, but I do think that if a lot of our kids and even the parents could
Oh
learn
my God.
these
Yeah.
skills, right? 100%. So let me ask you this, what is one of your personal favorite skills to use?
Oh my gosh.
And I know I'm putting you on the spot, not saying not well, just one. You could give a few because it would be hard to
Yeah.
say just one.
Well, my immediate reaction wasn't so much as like, well, it is like there's so many to choose from, but it's even more like, what does favorite mean? And
Right.
not to get into semantics, but like there's a favorite in opposite action in that like I often hate doing it, but it's so effective
Yeah.
that like it's a favorite, right? Like I've seen it
Right.
over and over again. And
Right.
so for folks who aren't familiar, opposite action is a skill for changing emotions that you don't want to be feeling. So by doing the opposite of what the emotion makes you feel like doing. So it's like really, really hard when you're feeling like even earlier like yesterday, I guess I really didn't want to go to my CrossFit class. I'm feeling really like low energy and anhedonic and like sad, but I knew in my wise mind that my body didn't actually need rest. Like going to that class, seeing my friends, getting my body moving would be helpful. So like everything in my emotion made me not want to go, but like opposite action, then going to the class, talking to people, like doing the workout to my best ability, like I came back in such a better mood. So
Isn't it amazing?
yeah,
Right?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But then like favorite as in like actually feels good, I would say one of my favorites is self-soothing. um I think that over the past few years in particular, this is a distress tolerance skill, sorry for folks who don't know. That is all about using the body senses to help yourself feel better and take care of yourself during emotional distress or fatigue or burnout or any kind of just like this is a difficult moment.
Right.
And I would say that over the past few years I've had more education on like body senses and the fact that there are even more than five, for example, the typical five senses, and just the importance of taking care of your sensory health as a part of self, like general physical self-care and health.
Yeah.
So self-soothing, I think, has become really big for me. Really like paying attention to lights, paying attention to sound, taking care of myself with like soft clothing, using weighted blankets, like all sorts of good stuff. So I love self-soothing.
Right. I think a lot of people get self-soothing so confused at times, right?
Mm,
Because they think, oh, I just self-soothing is like me just sitting on the couch and not doing anything, right?
interesting. Yeah.
And what I explain, because I used to think, oh, I'm self-soothing by like going for my run. That's me time. But
Mhm.
it can be.
It can
And
be.
there's so many more things that can be self-soothing. Me
Yes.
doing my facial routine, like my skincare, just taking care of my skincare that and doing it with intention and
Yes.
not just rushing through it,
Totally.
is self-soothing. But
Yeah.
I'll say, like, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely a go-getter and I want to get a lot of things done in my day, right? So I had a hard time when I remember when I first took this training and then when, and then even when Marsha did the whole update with emotion regulation, I still at that time was struggling with just not feeling guilty, so to speak,
Mm.
about doing some of these self-soothing skills. And
Mhm.
then now it's just like, second nature because I
Yeah.
let myself sit, like to your point about that opposite action is I felt guilty at times, either spending the money on facial stuff or like switching to different kind of joggers that like I just, because it cost me more money. And I had three joggers in my room that I don't need anymore, but like they weren't comfortable.
Right.
So why am I
Mhm.
gonna? So I had to sit with that guilt a lot, which was hard.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter of like, but I'm now so over that. Now I've got to stop buying joggers myself.
Right. Different problem.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a really common one. For me, I wouldn't say so. I definitely relate to the like being an like overcoming overwork or getting my self-worth
Right.
and productivity type of stuff, although I still definitely struggle with that. And for me, it wasn't so much guilt as much as just like anxiety. I had a lot of
Mm,
anxiety, and for me, it was like paying attention to my body, right? Like letting myself realize what felt good or what didn't feel good, or
right.
realizing the ways in which I was dissociating or just like ignoring or self-denying. So the reclaiming of that was like very uncomfortable. And I wouldn't say
Yeah.
guilt was my primary emotion, but there's definitely anxiety there. It's just like it's not easy, I think, to be mindful of physical sensations, to sit in being mind when that's wise to do,
Right.
to let yourself feel good in
Yeah.
some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. I think that body sensation is such an important key and it's such an important tool that a lot of people I don't even think that honestly, like I even had that when I first started. It wasn't until I
Yeah.
took a intensive mindfulness weekend, and I'm literally drawing a blank. But it was Linda DeMeth was there, I believe, and I mean it was like I'm looking at my books because this is what 54 is getting me. Um, she's a fact. It was a silent retreat. It was literally a silent retreat. You could speak at the beginning, the first lunch, and then the last one. And only when we met, you'll know who I'm talking about when I'm not drawing a blank, but she's a great mindfulness teacher, and she has a book, and I'll find it. But it was, I had to, and we did like 3 to 5 25-minute sits a day
Hmm.
on a, and literally like just I stared at the wall and you don't move. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize at that moment how uncomfortable I was with just sitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, we're not talking this was many years ago. This is like a few years after I was intensively trained.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it's really uncomfortable to sit with that quiet. And that's where like kind of like that doing mind kind
Yeah.
of just pops in. And if you're not mindful of that, that it's automatically just happening,
Hmm.
then you can easily get caught into it,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So it wasn't, so one of the other like pieces of my story, and it relates to what you're saying of in 2019, the year after my heart attack, I went on my first silent retreat as well. And it was really kind of cracked open a lot for me, including that, but like, oh man, sitting still and sitting with boredom, quote unquote, and sitting with like what's
100%,
actually here is really, really hard. As much as mindfulness training that I had had, there's something different of really dedicating that time. So
100%. Yeah. So you're not seeing clients anymore. So what are you doing?
yeah, I spend my time writing and speaking, content creating, and consulting. So it's really like my days look really different. As you mentioned in my bio, I have a book coming out in June, and so I've been spending a lot of time writing and editing that in the past few months, kind of finishing it up. Um, but then for speaking, well, various places, but then the content, like as you know, I do DVT, Kiki on YouTube and TikTok and these types of things. Um, and then the consulting I do is primarily with other like mental health organizations. So I
Mm,
work a lot with a suicide prevention nonprofit called Now Matters Now, although I've been doing less with them lately. Not on purpose. I love them. They're amazing. Check them out. And a few others. But that's,
yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking about going back into clinical practice, specifically doing assessments, but TBD.
Okay. And this workbook that you're coming out with, I'm so excited to see, to like, because it's so needed.
Yeah.
And I mean, our LGBTQ plus population needs more resources and they need more support, totally.
Yeah.
And, so I think this is fabulous that it's geared for specifically them, 100%.
Yeah, so I am queer, and as I wrote it over the past year and a half, it felt more like even personally helpful than ever before, given the, the cultural climate. But before I quit being a therapist, one of the things I did was do DBT skills and like DBT for LGBTQ plus people
Mm,
specifically. And it really is amazing how applicable DBT skills are because, as we're saying, they're applicable for everyone.
right,
But queer and trans people are more likely to struggle with emotional difficulties because of the what we would call minority stress, so
right,
discrimination and microaggressions and internalized stigma from anti-LGBTQ messaging, that they're more likely to struggle with emotional difficulties because of that experience.
right,
So they struggle with the exact types of difficulties that DBT skills have been shown in the research, like we talked about
right,
earlier, to be helpful for. But then even beyond that, DBT, like you said, like is so useful for cracking open black and white thinking. And there is so much black and white thinking around sexuality and gender.
100%.
So
Right.
like when you have a queer person, a queer client who's kind of like not fitting into the typical boxes that
Right.
culture is expecting, dialectics and DBT is just like such a helpful framework to have to help them.
Yeah. And it's interesting because even in my practice, I mean, I don't specialize in LGBTQ plus at all, but I've worked with
Yeah.
trans, I've worked with people, and I've taken them to where I need to get them to that they were coming to me. And then I say there's a lot more work for you that another specialist who can help you,
Yeah.
you know, and it was great. But even in my private practice, right? And clients who are not part of the LGBTQ plus at all, but they might have a thought, for example, of like, I don't know,
Yeah.
whether they're female and they have a thought of a female or they're male and they have a thought of a male. Well, does that mean I'm gay? And I'm like, no, it just means you had a thought,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't equal like what you can have both, right? They both can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Identity is very complex for everyone, no matter how you identify. And then sexuality, if we're just, I'm talking about sexual identity there, I
yeah,
suppose. But then sexuality is so complex and so diverse and made up of so many different things, and they are not the same. Like thoughts are not the same as behaviors, are not the same as desires, are not the same as fantasies, are not the
right,
same as identity. Like all of these things you get to
right,
decide for yourself and experience what's there.
yeah,
So it's complex and complicated, and I think
right,
dialectics and mindfulness skills are so
huge.
paramount. Yeah.
So when you first started practice, were you open about your sexuality and everything
It's a
from
great
the
question.
beginning?
I was out when I became a clinician, but it was interesting. There definitely was I wasn't, I wasn't as open about it as I am now, I guess is maybe the way to put it. I think that I still had a lot of internalized stigma myself in graduate school, for example, when I was starting to be a clinician. And by the time I graduated and started working private practice, it was still a big part of my like identity, but it wasn't a big part of my practice. I did a lot of research on it in grad school, but not as much clinical focus. But then when I joined NYCBT as a clinician after graduating, I was able to create that program that I mentioned, and it became a bigger piece of my like made it into my clinical bio more, if you will, my work
Right.
with LGBTQ folks. So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Did you have a lot of support growing up before you came out or until you came out or once you came out?
it's a good question. I didn't come out until college, and I think part of that was so for me, I identify as bi,
Hmm.
and so there is, and I was dating boys growing up. Um, So there is that. And I came from a very religious upbringing. And so I think part of my coming out in college was even coming out for myself,
Right.
kind of recognizing that part of my experience, given I had such a conditioning around that in
Right.
childhood that didn't let me see like everything that was there or recognize it for what it was.
Or even probably make you feel safe that it can even be there.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And that's
Which
where
is
I
what
think,
we're, go ahead.
no, go
Which is what I'm talking about with the internalized stigma, right? The
100%.
minority stress. If you grow up in an environment, whether it's your family of origin, your religious community, or your culture at large, telling you that being gay, bi, queer, trans, anything is bad,
Right. Or
hearing
wrong
that
that you
over
need,
and
right.
over, then you're going to
Yeah.
start believing that. And whether that means you just hide on purpose, whether it means you deny what's there, um, you just dissociate from it, invalidate it, all of the things, right? So people respond differently to it, but it would make sense that that would happen.
Right. And that's where, I mean, that goes back to why DBT is so important and so useful for so many,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't have to be, trans, queer, bi, gay at all to experience an invalidating environment.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Right.
I
Right.
mean, I remember at that training with Marcia, and I'll never forget, like I said, I wasn't even intensively trained. I think this was my first DBT course I had taken, and it was a
Mhm.
3-day training. And I remember she asked the audience, she was talking about validation, invalidation, what that looks like, right? And remember, I'm not a parent yet, okay? But I remember at that training, she had asked a couple of questions directed to the parents. So obviously I didn't raise my hand, right? Because I couldn't even relate. Okay. Now come back years later, I've taken some trainings with her and she asked the same question. How many
Mm.
parents here have ever told your kids that when they say it's, you're ready for bed and your kids come to you and say, well, you're so hungry, I'm so hungry. And you say to them, no, you cannot be hungry. You just had like 2 pounds of pasta. So I like thinking, I got this answer correct. I've done that. And she's like, you guys have all just invalidated your kid. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a horrible, and then all the judgment and the shame very quickly left because I
Yeah.
realized like I'm not a bad parent. And
Right.
we all invalidate at some stage, not with our intention to screw our kids up by any means, right? But because this is just who we are. Like we're humans, we're not perfect and we're not robots and we're not, programmed. But
Yeah.
I started laughing then because from that moment, I remembered thinking, wow, I need to think about how I'm invalidating my kids, even if it's not intentionally bad, right?
Totally.
And and kind of leads me to why I probably don't work with children because many of the parents in my location struggle with working on themselves. And I say to parents, if you would take a step back and look at how you parent, it's probably just because you didn't get the type of parenting that you needed,
Mhm.
right? And your relationship with your children can be so much better. It's not the kid. The kid is
Mhm.
just a product of the environment that, you
Mhm.
know, we've kind of fostered, shaped,
Mhm.
you know, and that goes,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I would argue the thing I love about DBT is it says the same thing about the parents. The parents are a product of the environment.
100%.
And so exactly like you said, of like the parents are usually just passing on the emotional education that they have received to their
Correct.
kids
Correct.
from their parents, from their greater community growing up, from their culture, right?
Correct.
And I think that's the other really incredible thing that Marcia did, taking into account culture. So even beyond the fact that validation happens all the time,
Right.
like written into the treatment manual is sexism in
Mhm.
particular.
Right.
But this can be applied to all the isms, not just transphobia and homophobia, sexism, racism, all of the things. If we
Right.
grow up in a greater cultural system that invalidates some experiences over others, like on a broad level, not just like
Right.
in this moment, you're not hungry.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it so powerful for a lot of people who are
Yeah.
struggling with invalidation in various ways.
Right. No, I mean, I love it. I think that when I think of the skills that I use the most, it's interesting because in a lot of ways I use radical acceptance in a lot of ways, like just naturally. And
Yeah.
then I do definitely still see some areas in my life that I have to really shift my mind to get to that radical acceptance piece. Doesn't equal, from our listeners, doesn't equal we like what's happening. It doesn't mean that we agree even with what's happening. It just means that we're existing and accepting what is at that moment where our feet are in that present time. And that doesn't mean that we can't go later on to try to use a different skill, whether it be an interpersonal effectiveness skill to change what we
Change. Yeah.
like something to change. But in that moment, I've definitely, which I would say prior to DBT, I didn't radically accept a lot of things. I was all about control. I was all about getting the
Mhm.
environment around me to change. And I was doing that. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because I got intensively trained in 2009 and then I got divorced in 2010. And I will say that if I did not have these skills, and I was still pretty new at them, don't forget, even though I had been using some type of DBT like with that my first client that I'd ever gotten, I was definitely not. I would never have even said I was trained. I even took a 2-day training in DBT because I took a 2-day training, but that did not mean I was a DBT therapist.
Mhm.
And but I will say that had I not had this DBT training and gone through that entire manual and the workbook with the clients that I was doing my groups with, I definitely don't think that my divorce and those years after would have been as peaceful. And peaceful is a strong word for a divorced couple, but I'm very friendly with my ex-husband and his wife, and we get along. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of it is because I had those skills.
Yeah. Totally. I can appreciate the word peaceful no matter what kind of emotional experience you had during that process. Like I
Yeah.
can assume it was ups and downs, positives, negatives, painful, happy, all the things,
Yeah.
right? and peaceful, I think, is often the word I go to when talking about like what wise mind often feels like.
Yeah.
And the wise mind is the dialectical synthesis of emotion and ration, right? And then like the painful and the pleasurable, all of the
Right.
things that you come to a sense of groundedness and peace, no matter what the chaos is.
Right.
And that's what's so
Absolutely.
powerful.
Yeah. And that's where I think I got a lot of my training with the radical acceptance is that we're going through this divorce and I'm going, and look, we got divorced for a reason. There were things
Mhm.
about me that I contributed plenty to that demise and vice versa. And now we're in a really great spot. Our kid, our kids see loving families. We're a very um non-traditional blended family, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
married, he's remarried, they have a kid, but we all are like a family.
Yeah.
I'm still family with my former in-laws, and that's a rarity. And I don't think people, and that, so that's where I'm at in my life, and where I'm at is I have so many opportunities and so many different experiences personally that I'm gonna practice trying to shift towards like using my DBT skills to help other married couples almost live
Mm.
a healthy life. But and I've been writing this book for a long time about how to live your married life pretty much as a divorced couple. Because,
Whoa.
yeah, it's a complete dialect, right? And so many people don't realize that I only learned that once I got divorced. Once I got divorced, I realized what I didn't have in my marriage. And then when I got remarried, I was like, oh no, we are not bringing that into this. I'm having
Mhm.
some space. I'm having quality time without my kids. I'm having quality time without my husband. I'm having quality time with my husband without our kids.
Yeah.
We will have quality time as a family. But a lot of people, so that's like where my next shift is going to be. I'm working on getting like kind of rebranding and
That's
not,
cool.
I'm not a great business person, and that's a weakness of mine, and it's a total judgment. I get it.
Okay.
I totally understand that. Um, that's where I struggle. That's my biggest struggle of like taking what's up here and getting it into like action,
Yeah, totally.
you know?
That's really cool. I have not been divorced, but I can appreciate like I've read a lot of divorce memoirs weirdly. Or not weirdly, I have. And feel like I've learned a lot from them in the
Yeah.
exact ways that you're saying. So that is very cool. It's like one of the main dialectical tensions. I think it's literally in the workbook of like dependence and
A
independence, right?
hundred percent.
That the synthesis is both, is
Correct.
interdependence, is something in there, not
Correct.
codependence,
A
like the
hundred
balance.
percent.
So that's
100%.
so cool. Oh,
So
I look
yeah.
forward to hearing more about that work.
Yeah. So that's one of my topics of what doing on one of my podcasts because again, like I'm trying to just, get out there more, but not just for me, but I think there are so many, I mean, divorce is so high. And actually, I don't think that many people are getting married because of the fear of divorce. And,
Totally.
and it's interesting because ironically, I'm not really a couples counselor. Like that's never really been my forte. I do work with couples and probably couples that are more on the higher functioning side that they both really want to work on it and they're both
Mm,
willing to look at, right? When you start into this dialect of like, it's your problem, you're tit for tat and things like that, it doesn't work. And
no.
so it's almost like you guys need separate individual therapists. But
Mm,
what I did realize is that there's so many of the younger generation and that are not wanting to even get married. And it's because of a lot of that, like, well, I'm just going to be independent my whole life. I don't want to be dependent on somebody else. And it's a dialect. You don't have to be like, I will not ever stop working, right? I love what I do, right? And I'm not going to ever be dependent again on a man financially. Does my
mm,
husband enhance my life? Absolutely. There's no question. But collectively, like, I'm not going to him and be like, hey, can I go buy that at
mm,
all? You know?
mhm,
It's
mhm,
more of not that I won't talk to him about certain things. Like, do you think
mhm.
this is an effective choice, to do
Yeah.
right now or not? But I think that so many of the younger generations, because there is so much like it's either you are aligned with this or you're not. And that's what I think, unfortunately, the younger generation doesn't really understand that it's not either or
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And I think this is where, I mean, for me, my head's going back to culture again and the system, like the ways in which sexism has invaded the
Right.
institution of marriage, right?
100%.
And so, how can we, like, I think one of the responses for younger people is being like, oh, that's where, speaking for maybe young women, oh, like, that's where I'm going to get subjugated. Then I'm not going there,
Right.
compared to going and changing it or making it your own and still not being afraid to connect with somebody.
Right.
Um, it's easier to do the black and white thing
Yeah.
for in a lot of ways, as we're
Right.
talking about.
Yeah. And I think that sticking with the black and white thinking also kind of short sights people because then they don't really take a look at it. Maybe it's not that you're not capable, it's that maybe you just don't have the ability to set boundaries. And
Yeah.
so not being able to set a boundary,
Yep.
right? When I mean, I go back to, and my husband may kill me when I share this, but he's gonna be really on my side. But I'll never forget, like I hadn't seen my best friend in a long time. And now we might talk periodically, like throughout the days, but it's stupid talk, right? Like, hey, what you doing? Nothing. Okay, bye. Talk to you later. Okay. We could do that 5 times a day, right? But I hadn't really had like that connection, that face to face. COVID had happened, like, let's sit down. And so he was at a business meeting and I had gone to dinner with her and he says, okay, well, I'll stop by on my way home. And
Mm,
I remember saying, no, don't, please. It's not because I don't want to see you. It's because I haven't seen her. And when
mhm,
I got home that night, and it did feel uncomfortable for me to say that,
mhm.
right? He was really hurt by that. And I totally understood where he was hurt by it.
Yep.
And I got it. And I said, I totally get where you're hurt by it. And
Yep.
I would have been resentful to you
Mhm.
if you had come because I didn't set a boundary
Yep.
and you would not have known my boundary. You wouldn't have known that I wanted this alone time
Totally.
because you cannot read my mind.
Right.
And I would have been resentful to you had I not set that boundary and you come and I didn't get to have the discussion I wanted to have or talk about the stuff we wanted to talk about because
Mhm.
you were present. And not because I can't share that with you, but because,
It's
you know,
different. It's
totally
okay.
different.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he got it. And that's why it's so important. I tell my client in their relationships, having your like these young kids have these social media trackers and they all know where everybody else is. And then they all get so upset. I'm like, why do we need this? What's the
Mhm,
purpose of that?
mhm,
You
mhm.
know, like it's not, it's only hurting you and the relationship because them being with a friend at the beach and not calling you doesn't equal they don't care about you.
Totally.
It just means they're at the beach with a friend.
Right. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And it's so interesting to me because, like, 100% to everything you just said. And if you had gotten home from your dinner with your friend and your
mhm,
husband says you hurt my feelings and you're like, well, let me explain my side. And he was like, I get that, but now let me explain my side. And his side was like, he hasn't seen your friend either in a really
right.
long time and he really loves her and like wanted to spend time with both of you together. And
Yeah,
you could have said, "Oh, I didn't think about it that way. Like, thank you
100%.
so much. Sorry, let's try to get a dinner the three of us together next time."
Absolutely.
Like, you get to not be afraid of the hurt and the conflict. You get to figure out together, like, oh, what can we continue to do better moving forward
Right.
that we both are getting our needs met?
Right.
And like sometimes it's going to be like, yeah, you don't come to the dinner, but sometimes it's going to be, oh, we'll do the three of us next time.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
I love,
And
like, that's so great.
yeah. And this kind of goes back to, I think, where we are today in this society, in this culture, are
Mm.
these things. Get it? These things. The instant gratification by these phones.
Yeah.
And and I say the young kids, but I mean like we're talking these kids that I mean that are even in their 20s, 30s, they don't know how to just sit and be, and it's a struggle. It's
Mhm.
hard for them.
Mhm.
And I empathize for them. I empathize with them that I have a lot of empathy that they don't, not because they don't want to, they don't know how.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would even argue that those things in our pockets are, ooh, it's a judgment to use the word eroding, but eroding
oh,
them for everyone.
totally.
Like, I would say I'm millennial and I didn't grow up with cell phones, but I grew up with like Facebook just coming online, for example. But like I think this applies to Gen Xers, baby boomers, everybody. Like technology is diminishing all of our abilities to just sit, to be embodied, to be bored, to be together. So
100%.
yeah, I think kids are at a disadvantage, however you're defining kid, but yeah.
Well, you're completely right because I didn't grow up with this. I mean, my first cell
Right.
phone was the kind you had to screw into your car, and that was in 1990.
Yeah.
So that gives our listeners any context. The first cell phone came out when I was in college. I was almost 20.
Yeah, totally.
So we we had call waiting. If you got a busy signal, you either got on your bike and you drove to your neighbors, right, to knock on their front door if you wanted to play.
Yeah.
Or even if you had call waiting and your siblings were on the phone and they didn't answer that beep,
Yeah.
right? So, but I have definitely found that I have needed to use a lot of my DBT skills and more about, I think honestly, that my observe and my describe and my awareness,
Mhm.
because I have found myself getting on TikTok, right? Like I said, what has been my agenda? I have wanted to help everybody and anyone in this world. If I had unlimited money and I could do whatever I wanted, right? I would stop charging for what I'm doing. I would still, I mean, I do some pro bonos and I have a sliding scale, but not a lot, but because I do need to make a living because
Right.
it's a balance, right?
Yep.
But I would get a yellow school bus. I would deck that thing out. I would renovate it. I would hire security so that I wasn't afraid to go into a community. And I would just offer whether they needed a little bit of validation, a
Mhm.
little bit of positivity, or they needed a 20-second or the 20-minute session or something. That's
Yeah.
what right? But I found that I get sidetracked. I get, I compare myself, right? To
Mhm.
like even like you, like I look at you, you are a fabulous speaker. I see what you do on TikTok and I'm like, "Oh my God, she's an amazing speaker. You really are. You
Thanks.
know the stuff, you flow." And I just look at this camera and I like freeze. And I'm like, "Whoa." How many times? And then I get to a point where I've like made something video 15, 20 times. I'm like, "Rachel, you're done. Put it down."
Ugh,
And
girl.
so
Yeah.
back to what you're saying, that's why like if I just keep on my course, which is it doesn't irrespective of yeah, I would love to have some passive income. And if I got monetized that way, which whatever you do, however, that would be fabulous. But I started my podcast because I wanted to help people who couldn't get to therapy for
Mhm.
whatever reason, whether
Yep.
it was because they couldn't afford it, families didn't support it, families didn't approve of it. They were in a rural area that they couldn't get therapy.
Right.
They can hear, listen to it, and it's not long. My guests are mostly the longest podcasts. Like my individual podcasts, they're like anywhere from 8 minutes to maybe I think my other longest one was like 16 minutes,
Hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard. So back to that, I even find myself as a 50-year-old person comparing myself
Totally.
to
Right.
people. And then I feel so much healthier when I take a break.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then we wonder why.
Yeah.
So I think erode is the perfect word.
A
It's
road.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's completely eroding just our ability to connect.
Hmm. Yes. I think my brain is on a systems lens this morning because I also hear in what you're saying, talking about using your observe and describe skills, like needing to step back and really use your DBT skills to not get sucked in. And like, yes, that is one side of the dialectic. And the other side of the dialectic is like, we know as DBT therapists that when someone is trying to change the most difficult of behaviors, like substance use or something like that,
Mhm.
like it's also way more than just individual skills. It's changing the system, it's getting the drug out of the house, it's changing where you go, who you see. Like there are reasons why folks who go into AA often like need to change everything about their lives, for
100%.
example. We know from behavior change that change is really hard and that reinforcers are really strong. And these little things in our pockets are designed to reinforce us. So I think folks also get stuck in like not recognizing like it's not their fault that
Correct.
they're comparing themselves, that they're doom scrolling, that they're stuck in these things. And like, so it's not like it is as easy as like turn off the phone, but that's not easy. And that's the
No.
point. So it's a complicated thing that, as you're saying, these phones and technology disconnect us, but we're going to have to come together as a society to figure out how can we help all of us disconnect from this
Right.
thing to reconnect with each other.
Right. For sure. I mean, I will say that I tend to put my phone away for Shabbat, Friday nights.
Nice.
And I've been doing this. I've definitely not been as um strict with it as I was for the first like year when I came back from Israel.
Mhm.
Um, it was so easy over there to put it away because a lot of people did. So again,
Exactly.
right? So
Right?
you're around the culture, and this is
Yes.
not like a political thing, but all, but like when you're around like-minded people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
My kids forget that I'm not using my phone. So they'll
Yep.
text me and I'm like, okay, is it an emergency? Like,
Yep.
so I'm checking, or I'll have my husband check. If I go visit my son, he was in Chicago for a few years at college. I had no idea how to get around. So I needed my phone to use a map.
Yep.
It might be on a Saturday. So, but getting back to that, I disconnect to reconnect. We just went away
Yep.
for 2 weeks and the service was horrible there. The Wi-Fi was so
Yes.
bad. It was amazing because you get to a point where
Yeah.
like, as much as I was trying to like upload things for like a few days ahead, so I'm not on my phone, I'm like, screw it, I'm done. It's timing out. It's not uploading it. I'm good. I put my phone
Good for
down.
you.
I read a book. I finished a book. I started another book. I'm like, oh, this was amazing. And that's what is so important. And I think it's funny. I actually just did I don't know when if I posted it yesterday, if it's coming up today or tomorrow, but I just did a quick, I was in my car and I thought, oh, it's somebody's birthday. I saw it on Facebook. And instead of just doing the generic AI, happy birthday, I'm
Yeah.
like, I got out because they're a friend of mine and I sent them a text because it was kind of early in the morning. So I didn't really want to call. And, but I realized like even that,
Mhm.
sending a personal text is a connection versus like a Facebook message that just AI just says, and so they're getting the same happy birthday with like the little confetti,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I made a post. Like sometimes it's important. That's what I'm bringing into the new year for me is really trying to make an effort. And it is effort. And I don't want our listeners to think that, oh, it's just so easy. It's not. It's a conscious choice, a conscious awareness that I'm saying I'm intentionally going to reach out, or I'm
Mhm.
intentionally going to make a plan to go to dinner with a friend, even if I just feel like sitting at home,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, like you didn't feel like going to CrossFit
Same thing.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Those thoughts that were probably coming in your mind, they were probably super strong because I know I've been there. I've been there. Like, oh, I could stay in bed. It's probably cold. I could, I don't really need to go. My body's tired. Oh yeah, that thought of I'm tired, we can easily be like, oh, I need to sleep more,
Yep.
just need to stay in bed more. But
Mhm.
I tell my clients, just get up and do it tired. As long as it's not dangerous, like driving. If you're really tired, don't drive.
Right.
Tired,
Still, obviously, yeah. And if you need more sleep, get more sleep, but still go
correct.
to CrossFit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so I think there's so much, and that's why I love bringing now guests on because I think there's so much to be said about how we can utilize all these skills, and DBT and just because it really is, it's just it's really like life tools,
It totally is. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
100%. Like the amount that I use them now, even if I'm not like, okay, now I do opposite action. Like it's just a muscle memory now
Right.
often. Um, but it makes a huge difference. And they all like interplay and work with one another to keep reinforcing themselves. Work in progress, as you said, and the
Yeah,
work will never end, basically. Like the practice is ongoing,
correct.
period. But yeah, no, life changing for sure.
No, I completely agree. And I mean, I've seen, I've never been one into research, but I know that you guys are doing some amazing stuff with research. My brain doesn't think like that. I had to take a research class in college and grad school, and I remember like white knuckling it the whole time.
Yeah.
It's just, but I think it's amazing. And there's definitely a lot to be said. And it's not the only modality. There's plenty of modalities for other people too, right?
Oh,
And that's
totally.
what people think, oh, you're a DBT therapist. So well, I only do DBT. I mean, yes, I
Yes.
do other cognitive behavioral work, but no, I don't do, EMDR. I'm not, I don't do trauma work. I'm not a
Yeah.
trauma specialist. But for me, this is a very amazing. And so I tell people like DBT may not be something that you're ready to hop on board right now because it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of work
Hmm.
and it's not
Hmm.
easy.
No, yeah, I think that's just another dialectical truth and dialectical synthesis of like there is really heavy evidence for DBT helping a number of different people and types of difficulties. I personally have seen DBT to be life-changing, and I know that the goal of DBT is helping each individual person build a life worth living that's based on their own unique values and their own unique wise mind. And their wise mind might not be DBT. There are plenty of other options. And I think finding that wisdom, whether it comes in DBT or not, is like a part of the practice too. So
Absolutely.
I am at the end of the day never like I'm obsessed with DBT, but
Same.
if someone doesn't like it, fine. That's okay. Right.
Right.
I hope that they find the wisdom and the peace and the joy that they can using whatever they do.
Right. And DBT may be something that they choose to get into later after they've already
Yes.
found a way to kind of take that edge off and to like learn a little bit more to regulate themselves.
Yep, that
And there's
happens.
nothing wrong with that. And I tell people that
No.
all the time, you know?
Yeah. Change is constant.
Absolutely. I said that is exactly
Also people who find DBT really, really helpful and then they move on from it. Like I'm still obsessed and I'm always gonna love it probably, but I've had plenty of clients who come to DBT in like stage one, get what they need from it, and then move on to something else and like
right.
never look back and like, great, good, love it.
Right. But I'm gonna guess that they're still utilizing a lot of those skills.
I mean, same,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah. Although we can't know that because we don't have them that
Yep.
after, but yes.
I think
So
that's because a lot of DBT's wisdom comes from not DBT, right? Like Marsha was inspired by humanist therapy, inspired by cognitive and behavioral therapy, obviously, and was inspired by Buddhism.
right,
So, yeah,
right. So true.
there's wisdom all over the place.
Right. I think that's at least, I remember when I first started, a lot of people when they'd come to therapy and I talked to them about DBT and the framework of it and what it looks like. They're like, well, this is, they'd use a judgment. This is so stupid. Like this is like I should be doing this. I'm like, well, if you had learned these skills, you would not be sitting here needing to be getting these skills again. And it
Right.
just because they're logically, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing them, bringing them into your life where that, ultimately you have that for my listeners that are in the 7 in diary card, right? They just happen automatically and you're
Mm-hmm.
not even thinking about, oh, I've just used some DBT skills. They just
Yeah. No,
happen,
no, no. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
That's the ultimate goal,
yeah.
you
Totally.
know? And it,
I
yeah,
also, to your point, like you can't know what you don't know. And I think the experience of knowing exactly what would be best for you and still not doing it, like that's a human experience.
right,
Like that isn't
real,
dysfunction or like pathology. Like,
right.
yeah, we want to avoid that and decrease it, but like that is human.
Right.
So we're all doing the best we can with what
Of
we've been
course.
given.
Right. Well, I have so appreciated you. I'm so excited that I finally got to
Yeah.
meet you in person and see this is awesome. And I
Yeah.
so appreciate you. So I'm gonna tag you and put you in my show notes so anybody who wants to reach out to you. And also, you do have a website, don't you? I
I
know
do.
that you do.
Yeah, it's my name, kikifehling.com. And there folks can find like all of the things I've mentioned, as well as like so many resources that I like that are free or just affordable and things like that. I also think I'm going to be like actually using my newsletter more, so you can
Oh, I
sign up
love
for it
that.
there as well.
Oh, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah,
I
nice.
like newsletters
Oh yeah.
from other people.
I feel like I'm only just getting into them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, it kind of goes back to that that pressure.
Yeah,
But then that for me, is that a perfectionism kind of pressure that I'm I need to do one every week or versus so
totally.
balance it, right? Like it's the same thing when my first podcast, that's why it's called Perfectly Imperfect Me 365 because I was not consistent.
Yeah.
I went into this knowing that I was my first podcast, the first episode was done on my phone,
Wow,
literally.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think the first 20 of them might have been just on my phone,
Huh.
probably even more than that. Until, my son's like, why don't you start using your computer, mom? And it was actually, when I started actually is when I started doing the audio, the visual.
Oh, sure.
First, many of them were just audio.
Yeah,
And
that's
then I
really
started
cool.
doing visual. So yeah, so it's, but that's why it's that ability to just kind of notice all the branches that are coming from the brain that, okay, so here's my all or nothing thinking. Is it perfectionism or is it the all or nothing? And, but, if people are afraid to look at their minds, then they don't get to really see what is really right in front of them. And it's really not as scary. Not that doesn't mean that there's been some really crappy things that have happened
Mhm.
in somebody's life and thoughts can be really and flashbacks and things. But just like the generic,
Mhm.
is this me just being a perfectionist or thinking in the all or nothing?
Mhm.
And I get caught up in that a lot. And that's something that I work on a daily basis.
Same. Yeah, no, perfectionism for sure. Yeah, as you said, if you don't look at your brain, if you're too scared to look at it, then you can just know with a lot of certainty, but not complete certainty, that you're just going to stay stuck in whatever condition patterns are there.
Right.
And some of those might be really helpful condition patterns, and some of them will not be. So it's just a matter of what your willingness to do that work in order to see that change.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I so appreciate you and I look forward to getting your LGBTQ plus mental health workbook coming out June of this year.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so
That's
much.
exciting. That's
Yeah,
going to
I'm
be
excited.
awesome.
Thank you.
So, and I'll link you in my show notes in your website and at DBT Kiki for sure. TikTok and YouTube. Is that the name across all of
And
your
Instagram. Yep.
and
Mhm.
Instagram? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
all
that's
the
easy.
ways. Yeah.
That was, and I didn't think like that. Somehow I have like different names.
Yeah.
Not really
You
sure
can look
why.
into it. You can still change it
Yeah,
on most of them if it's available. Yeah.
yeah. I will give that a chance. But thank you to our listeners, and I
Yes.
so appreciate you. And this has been Perfectly Imperfect Me 365.
Yeah.
And I will speak to you guys later.